Have you ever heard a prophecy preached your whole life, only to one day discover that everything you thought you knew was completely wrong? Well, brace yourself right now, because what you about to hear might flip your understanding of Bible prophecy upside down in the next few seconds. The nation Daniel pointed to as the birthplace of the Antichrist is not the one most believers assume. And once you see the clues hidden in plain sight for over 2,500 years, you may never read your Bible the same way again. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping revelation, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe right now, share this video with someone who loves deep biblical mysteries, and comment below the exact time you're watching this, because what you're about to hear requires your full focus from beginning to end. For centuries, believers have been taught to look toward a specific region for the rise of the final world ruler. Some point to Europe, some to a revived Roman Empire, some to a modern global superpower. But when we go way back to the book of Daniel, to the original languages, to the geography of the ancient kingdoms, Daniel saw in his visions we find a detail so shocking, so overlooked, and so prophetically explosive that it changes everything. Daniel didn't just describe the character of the Antichrist. He didn't just outline his rise, his power, or his deception. He pinpointed the exact territory from which this sinister figure will emerge. Right down to the ancient nation that would one day become a modern country most Christians never suspect. Everything begins in Daniel's vision of the four beasts, four empires that would dominate world history before the rise of the Antichrist. Most pastors teach the broad strokes: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. But hidden inside the third empire, the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great, is the key to discovering where the Antichrist will originate. Daniel 8 gives us the image of a mighty goat coming from the west, covering the entire earth without even touching the ground, a prophetic symbol of Alexander's lightning-fast conquests. But then something strange happens. The horn representing Alexander is suddenly broken, and in its place rise four notable horns, four kingdoms that would emerge from Alexander's empire. These kingdoms were ruled by Alexander's generals. And from one of those four divisions, Daniel says, a little horn would arise, a powerful, boastful, blasphemous ruler, a destroyer of the holy people, a master of deception, the one we've come to call the Antichrist. This is where most Christians stop. They read little horn, assume it represents a symbolic region, and jump straight to Rome. But Daniel didn't leave this vague. He literally told us which of the four divisions would birth this end-time figure, and that division corresponds to a real modern nation. To understand this, we have to go back to the geopolitical map after Alexander's death. His empire split into four parts: the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Cassander kingdom in Greece, the Lysimachus kingdom in Thrace and part of Asia Minor, and the Seleucid Empire stretching across Syria, Mesopotamia, and parts of modern-day Turkey and Iraq. Daniel says the little horn comes out of one of them, not out of all four, not out of Rome, but out of one specific division. And historically, the only division from which a ruler arose who foreshadowed the Antichrist was the Seleucid Empire. Why is this important? Because the Seleucid Empire wasn't located in Europe. It wasn't centered in Rome. It was centered in the region of modern-day Syria, parts of Iraq, and most shockingly, Turkey. And this is where the plot twists in ways most modern prophecy teachers never address. When Daniel describes the characteristics of the final Antichrist, he uses geographical clues tied directly to the Seleucid territory, especially the region north of Israel, historically ruled by kings who rose from what is now Turkey. Scholars point out that Antiochus Epiphanes, considered the greatest foreshadowing of the Antichrist, was not European. He didn't come from Rome. He didn't come from the West. He came from the exact region of modern Turkey, ruling as a Seleucid king. Daniel uses Antiochus not only as a historical figure, but as a prophetic pattern. In other words, Daniel is showing us the shadow so we recognize the substance when he arrives. Now here's where this becomes truly earth-shaking. Daniel 11 describes a king who shall exalt himself above every god, who desecrates the sanctuary, who rises from the region of the ancient kings of the north. And historically, the king of the north was not Rome, it was not Greece, it was not Egypt. The king of the north was consistently the ruler of the territory that corresponds to Turkey and northern Syria. This means Daniel ties the Antichrist's origin not to Europe, not to the Vatican, not to America, but to a nation most Christians never consider: Turkey. But wait, there is even more detail Daniel gives that makes this conclusion unavoidable. In Daniel 8-9, the little horn grows toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. This is a directional clue. The Antichrist expands his power toward Israel, which means he must be coming from the northwest direction relative to the Holy Land. That eliminates nearly every commonly suggested nation. The only one that fits geographically, historically, and prophetically is Turkey. And if that still seems surprising, consider this. Turkey sits at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. It is the ancient seat of multiple empires. It controls territory once ruled by the Seleucid dynasty. It is home to the city of Pergamum, which Revelation calls where Satan's throne is. It plays a central role in Ezekiel's end-time war prophecies under the name Togarmah, and it is rapidly becoming a dominant geopolitical force today, militarily, religiously, and regionally. Many believers have spent decades looking toward Rome or Brussels or Washington, while the nation Daniel pointed to has been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Imagine the shock of realizing that Daniel, writing over 2,500 years ago, was pointing toward a country that didn't even exist yet in its modern form. A country most prophecy teachers ignore. A country now rising in global influence. A country sitting on ancient prophetic foundations. When you line up the clues from Daniel 8, Daniel 11, the Seleucid Empire, the geographical directions, the historical patterns, and the early foreshadowing of Antiochus Epiphanes, the evidence converges on one astonishing conclusion. The Antichrist's origin is not a mystery at all. Daniel named the exact region, history preserved the pattern, and the modern map confirms what prophecy already declared. This doesn't mean the Antichrist will necessarily be Turkish by ethnicity. Prophecy rarely deals with genetics, it deals with territory, it deals with kingdoms. It deals with the spiritual and political geography of power. What Daniel reveals is the territory from which this end-time ruler emerges, the region of the ancient Seleucid kingdom, which today points overwhelmingly toward Turkey. And this is where everything becomes even more urgent. As global tensions rise in the Middle East, as alliances shift, as nations realign, as Turkey positions itself as a rising power, the stage is quietly being set for something the world is not prepared for. The final ruler Daniel saw, the one with eyes like a man and a mouth speaking great things, is not coming from where most people expect him. And when he arrives, the world will be caught off guard. But you won't be. Because now you've seen the clues Daniel hid in the text, clues most believers have never been taught. You followed the trail from Alexander's empire to the four generals, to the Seleucid kingdom, to the king of the north, to the direction of expansion toward Israel, to the modern nation sitting at the heart of all those prophecies, Turkey. If this stunned you, challenged you, or opened your eyes to something you've never seen before, make sure you like this video. Subscribe right now for more deep prophetic revelations. Share it with someone who loves Bible mysteries, and drop a comment with the exact time you're watching this. Because this journey isn't over, and what comes next will shake you even more than what you just heard.